bbqmemphis.com.
Speaking of Memphis flavor, we got a guy back. Charlie Leonard from Christian Brothers High School, CBU, Memphis, is coming back to take the Houston High School job. Good morning, Charlie, and welcome back to Memphis.
Man, I'm listening to a barbecue commercial. It's like being home.
There you go.
You weren't listening to much of that unless it had a Cajun accent with the last stop. Is that what you're telling me?
No, it would have had crawfish and some kind of Zachary's sauce on the thing.
Oh, yeah.
I've been places where the flavors have been different. Believe me.
Well, you started in Cincinnati, Montgomery Inn and their barbecue. They're all chili. So now you're back to something with a little more stability in my mind. The barbecue.
Oh, yeah, Texas, it was that beef barbecue. I had a hard time with.
So talk a little bit about this journey. What brings you back here?
Well, they let us go at LSU and. But what I did formally was I retired, and in the process of doing that, a couple of weeks ago, Chad Becker, who's the AD out at Houston High School, and he's a former player of mine
right.
From CBU. Chad and I have always talked, and we were laughing about something, and he asked me what I was going to do, and I said, well, I'm too old to do one thing and too young to do another. So he said, hey, would you be interested? And I said, well, let's look at it. And I talked to Kyle Cherry, who's the principal out there, and has done an unbelievable job as far as, establishing and continuing a great reputation academically for Houston High School. And it's always been fun, and I think I've told a bunch of folks over the years that when I first started coaching in college in 1990, that when it was all said and done, I'd probably go back and do some high school stuff, and little did I know that was going to happen.
So they have an interesting new setup, right, with the way county schools are going about it. And I know Houston has a whole bunch of athletes there. So what will your team sort of look like here?
Well, I don't know. I'm going to see part of it today. The base of the folks that we're going to deal with are literally right there. Houston is now its own independent school district. I think, people still consider Germantown and Houston in the same situation. But Germantown, of course, now is a quote city/county high school. Mm-hmm. The Germantown municipality is now responsible solely for Houston and its feeder schools of Riverdale and Dogwood and Houston Middle. So it's a different setup. They're still in the process of making the transitions from a standpoint of facilities and everything else and taxation within the community. But it's going to be really good. The school is outstanding. So it's going to be similar, other than the fact that it's going to be co-ed, it's going to be similar to what I dealt with previously at Memphis Prep and also at CBHS from a standpoint of academic credibility. And that's a big thing to me.
Is the kid of today, the high school athlete that you're about to coach, is he different than the one that you coached 20, 25 years ago now?
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. There's a guy named Tim Elmore, and he refers to it as the IY millennials. They're different, but it's like anything else. You grow. David, you're not the same that you were when you and I used to do radio together, 25, 30 years ago. The kids aren't the same. So you've got to grow with them. And it's basically the technology is what has changed everything. So you have to relate to them in a different way, but at the same time, your responsibility is to allow them, the process is necessary to grow, and that's what you do.
What is IY millennials? I don't know.
Oh, it's the I generation, the iPhone. Everything, we're all addicted to it. The things that kids do now on their phone, we would have never done. The instant feedback that kids need now, In the old days, no was a complete sentence. Now it's no, and this is why.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to adjust. But when it's all said and done, you're still responsible for helping those people grow, and you've got to figure out how to relate to them to make them, a little bit better people when it's all said and done.
Well, that sounds like you were setting yourself up for a challenge because you have to relate differently now. So your approach has to be different as a coach, right?
Oh yeah. It's like anything else, though, Dave. You're as a parent, you understand that, there's still some, there's some constants, and what you've got to do is you've got to be able to get those constants that you expect from kids. You've got to get them to buy into them. It's just that you have to do it now a different way. And we just finished dealing with Ben Simmons a couple of years ago.
Right.
Ben was a completely different thing. Ben was the most unique high school kid in the history of high school basketball. So that whatever happened in and around Ben's life was different than anything that any kid had ever experienced, and we had to handle it, on the fly because it was new. So this generation of kids, there's going to be the next technology is going to change the next generation of kids. It's part of, evolving as a society and, as teachers.
I always felt like, this is like, it's one of those things that's hard to quantify, or it's hard to really, put into words. But I feel like that there are connections that are harder to make, I guess, not only between kids themselves, but also, authority figures, teachers, parents, and coaches and the kids, because of the technology. I don't know that the people have changed so much, but boy, it seems like there's a little bit of a wall there, and you can break that wall. To break that wall down from in your position is, to me, it seems like it's got to be a little bit harder now than it was.
Well, that's part of the cell phone era. It has been impersonalized because of the phone. I remember when before the kids had headphones and with iMacs and iPads and all that other stuff. When you drove to and from a game, they sat there and talked to each other. Then came headphones, and it became less personalized because there was less communication. And right now, it's the same thing. Kids immediately run to their phone. So you've got to, it's incumbent on us to bring them into society, from a personal standpoint. So that's part of the challenge. But that's the reality of it, and that's what we've got to be able to deal with. You've got to get kids to relate to each other instead of just themselves in the phone.
It is amazing. My wife and I eat out a lot, and I watch families at restaurants not interacting at all. I watch the kids and even sometimes the parents. They are looking at their phones and texting during the meal instead of sharing the day. Drives me absolutely nuts. And like dating, and this is in particularly true for high school kids, and I can remember my younger kids when they got into it. It wasn't like you'd call a girl up to go and ask her to go on a date and have to think about things to talk to her about to try to make yourself more attractive in her eyes. Now you're texting. It's this
that's
crazy.
Right. Well, Dave, when I coached in my last coaching gig in high school, there were no cell phones that were affordable to anybody. That was normal. There was no social media. So all of those things have changed. And you don't change your morals. You don't change your standards. You just have to change how you apply things. Last night I ate at Pat Lucchese's place out in Germantown. Never been there before, Cafe Piazza. And on the menu, while I was reading the thing, in the bottom of the thing, it said, please, the notice was, please don't use your cell phone while in the restaurant. And I thought, what a novel great idea.
Yeah.
That was great. I, as soon as I read it, I started laughing. And I'm like, that's hard for people to do. But as we were eating, I looked around the restaurant, and it was kind of, I don't want to say loud, but it was a very social atmosphere, which meant that everybody was having a good time talking rather than constantly checking the phone.
Since you brought him up earlier, off technology for a second, you mentioned Ben Simmons and how heralded he was, and you guys got a coup and you landed him to come to LSU, but it really did not work out so well, and then he's gotten injured. How good of an NBA player do you think he will be, and what went wrong at LSU?
Oh, it's pretty easy. The biggest thing I've learned in the last 30 years is the fine line between being perceived as successful or a failure. And as a high school coach, we lost the game in the state quarterfinals or semifinals on a 3-point shot. And at CBU, same thing, lost one to Don Meyer, which would have sent us to the national tournament. When I was at Memphis, Kieran Shines misses a 3 against DePaul the year that we were there that would have put us in the finals. That was it. Kid from Cincinnati, Kenyon Martin, broke his leg.
Right.
We'd have been in the finals. We would have been in the NCAA tournament. That fine line, we might have still been in Memphis. You never know what the thing.
There might not have been a John Calipari here, is what you're saying.
That's right. And John was funny because he told Johnny and I that it was one of those things that, hey, if you win it, I'm not getting involved with that mess. But with Simmons, the biggest single thing was when Hornsby missed 14 games, and when Keith was gone, that changed the dynamic because Ben's not only is he a dominant player, but he's an unbelievable facilitator. And a guy like Hornsby was such a great shooter that he changed the game. And when you didn't have that stretch shooter out there, then people could do things to Ben that were he wasn't as comfortable doing. He just didn't give him an outlet, which was why he's going to be a great pro, because they're going to, the pickup of J.J. Redick by the 76ers was an absolute coup from a standpoint of now all of a sudden Fultz and Redick around a guy like Simmons with Embiid and the rest of them are going to allow him to comfortably play the game, because he is absolutely a great kid and special with the ball.
Can he be a point guard, Charlie, at that level? Can I get that? Because that's what he wants to be.
Yeah, Peter, I think we all get hung up with calling kids a particular position, and I think now basketball is a positionless game. But he has point guard skills. He's 6'9". Well, he left us at 6'9", something. His godfather worked with us. David said he's almost 7 foot now. So I mean that's crazy.
So he's either growing or they're fudging the numbers.
I bet he's growing.
Well, it's the NBA numbers can get fudged, except for the analytical part. So, but that's part of it. But no, I think he's going to be a really good pro. But I think he's always going to have guys. He's always going to, and the game is different now. I think if you put a couple shooters out there, and Ben's a good shooter, which has always been the ironic part of the whole thing, because he shoots it better than people know, and I think he's great. But the whole thing has been not overblown, but you lose a kid at the wrong time, and it changes everything. I tell people 25, 30 years ago that all coaches are a twisted ankle away from either being stupid or fired. And that goes with it. And with social media, whatever information is out there is now, it's, I don't want to say overblown, but it's amplified. And, you as a coach in this profession, you've got to be willing to deal with it. Well, but I've had a fun ride, David. I can't. I've worked with some great guys, and Eric Musselman was with us for a year, and Muss is out at Nevada now, but Muss was runner-up coach of the year in the NBA to Pop one year, and Brendan Surr was with us for a couple of years, and Brendan was with the Bad Boys and was a GM, and was he'd been with Hubie, and the funny part with Brendan was coached by Hubie in high school, and then later on coached with him in Atlanta, and has been been around with it. So I've been really fortunate. My time out of Memphis has been, NCAA tournaments, trips to the Bahamas, the Virgin Islands, Australia, number one draft picks. We beat Kentucky one year by about 18, and been to a lot of places. And Johnny, I'm on Johnny's coattail. I've had a lot of fun. So this is I'm excited about this. This is going to be fun.
Last thing is we go full circle here, and you're talking about how the game has changed. How will you play at Houston High School? Will you be space and pace? Because that was not the Charlie Leonard style of the past.
No, you say that, but David, you go back and look at it. We didn't shoot a lot of threes because there wasn't a three-point line back then.
Mm-hmm.
But we were always a high-scoring team. And when I was at CBU, we averaged. There were in the 7 years I was there, we averaged in the 90s, I think, 4 years. I may be old school from a standpoint of my expectations, but aggression's never been my problem, or lack of aggression's never been my problem. But I think we're going to have a lot of fun. But we'll and then we can always say, well, we're going to be young and whatever. But it's high school, so we're going to have a good time with it. But we're going to make sure the kids grow up. The big thing we're going to deal with is individual development, on and off the floor, because that's the job of every high school teacher. And
that you always did a great job with. If I talk to any of your former players, I'm not kidding. They all still love you, and I don't know that every high school coach can say that. Charlie, I'm so glad you're back. Can't wait to do some lunches and try to get you on the golf course here too.
Oh, well, believe it or not, I've only played once in the last 7 years, and that was out at Edgewood about a week and a half ago out in Tahoe.
Oh, that's not a bad way to rekindle your career.
Yeah, well, it was fun. It was fun. But you and Peter, I appreciate you having me on, and we're going to be back. And when I get squared away, I literally just left the house trying to figure out where I'm going to live, and I'm on my way to Gibson Donuts because I got to have my Memphis fix, and then go to practice here later on.
Tell Deweese hello. Thank you, my friend. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
I appreciate you having me, fellas.
The new coach of Houston High School, the great Charlie Leonard. So good to have him back. We got to take a break.